Hello and welcome. They say history is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. Well, at least that's what Napoleon said. And it'll be that topic that we are exploring today, and the compilation of the mudflood and the fall of an empire. And what I hope to present to you in this short video is an alternative to the mainstream narrative. That these are not just cultural layers or basement windows buried over. That these images present a clear evidence of the mudflood, a seemingly realm-wide cataclysmic reset that left this world buried in several meters of mud. And I believe it's such an important subject to research and analyze, because we know so little of our true history. And to know where we are going and what path we are heading on, we must first know where we've been. And that is something collectively, it seems like we are nothing more than a species of amnesia. And perhaps that was thanks to the orphan trains and all these asylums that popped up all over the realm around the period of the last reset, which by all and best estimations puts it at around the mid to late 1800s. And what you see in a lot of these pictures from that time period, like these, this was the alleged building of the Transcontinental Railroad. It looks to me a lot more like the unburying of a railroad. And this isn't the only imagery or evidence of such railroads being discovered just completely buried under meters of soil. There's been complete tracks uncovered in the United States, in Georgia, and in Russia fairly recently. And I believe even a whole entire train yard was found in the UK. The statues are always what really kind of sold the idea of the mud flood for me, at least. I mean, they say cultural layers, but it just doesn't explain the most famous statues like the Eastern Island heads. These Egyptian sculptures and statues, they're just completely buried and forgotten. And look at how happy they are when they find them. But of course, the most famous ones, the ones that we learned were just the Eastern Island heads, actually ended up being the Easter Island bodies. And of course, tragically, more recently, they somehow caught fire and were irreversibly damaged according to the local government. Just another part of history that's lost to us. But once scientists decided to start burying down, they found these entire well-carved and intricate whole entire bodies to these Easter Island heads. And why it took them so long to actually discover this is beyond me, but whether they knew already, I'm sure, but the disclosure. And there's just no explanation in the mainstream why an island would just be completely covered. And that's the same thing with the cultural layer and the accumulation of topsoil. They can't explain it, why in some areas they seem to accumulate more. Some areas actually seem to lose topsoil. But we seem to be accumulating it by these pictures at a rapid rate. And it's everywhere you find. From the old world, the old country as it were, to America. Buried statues, buried buildings, complete floors of buried buildings. And it wasn't always just the mud. When you look at some of these pictures, it almost looks like melting of stone and brick, deforming the structures. And it's the same everywhere you look. Whether it's Rome, Kansas City, Missouri, people unburying the cities. These aren't laying of pipes or a random statue they just rediscovered in China. This is several meters layers of mud, seemingly coming out of nowhere. And it's not buildings left to ruin that we build on top of old. No, these are the same buildings, with just layers of them being forgotten here in DC. This doesn't look like a renovation work. You can see the towers and those pillars continuing on down, way underground. And of course, nice and covering it all up right there, so you can't really see the fine details. But for those with open eyes, they can see. And beautiful mosaic floors, found once again under several meters of mud. Structures and archways. More mosaic floors. And I have to recommend here a great TikToker, Museum of Tarot. He did a fantastic video the other day on Tartaria and the hidden history of the Americas. And there was this book here he referenced, History, Fiction, or Science. And it talks all about the rewriting of history, the removal of tartarianempires, the Moors, and all of that to conform with the church's teachings. And it's a great video. He's a great TikToker. Highly recommend him. But that's what we have going on here. A complete rewriting of history. The story they tell us is just his story. Couple hundred years is a damn good job at rewriting that, leaving out all the best parts, the grand empires of Tartaria. But it wasn't just about Tartaria, it was what it represented, the technology that we had in the past. They say just because we have these little phones in our hands and great CGI and rocket ships to the moon, that we are the most advanced civilization that has ever walked this realm. Just look, this is old world Seattle before the fire, and this is after. Now, you see utility poles, trees, and barely any scorching. And what they do after this fire, they decide, as they tell us, to build the houses up on top of mud and bury the subsequent floors. And as you see here, this is the Seattle Underground. And that's the story they're going with it. That they just buried this all underground to cover up the fire. Now looking at those few pictures back there, that looks far more like a war zone than any fire. And you can see that same from any of the said great fires. The numerous dozens and dozens from that same period, along with the wars and the civil wars. All made to cover up something a lot more. Wars just like the ones we're having today. They're all nothing more than theatrics. Theatrics to distract the masses. Same with politics. Politics is nothing more than sports for people who don't like sports. Look at this, all underground Seattle. Just buried up over a fire. You don't see any fire damage in any of these. But that's what they say happened here. And again, I think the evidence starts becoming more and more clear. Orwell said in his book 1984, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped." And that is such a true quote from this book. And if you haven't read that book, 1984, highly recommend it. Very eerily similar correlations to events happening today with the erasure of history and science. And on that note, friends, I hope I helped paint a clear picture of the mud flood. And not just the mud flood, but other resets and the erasure of our history. And I'm sorry I haven't posted as much on my YouTube channel as I'd like. Again, events in my day-to-day just make it very hard to sit down sometimes and get access to a computer here. And especially with my wife just wrapping up her teaching degree. So it's exciting times for us, but it requires her to use the computer most of her free time. But I do hope to be posting more frequently as she wraps up with that and other things in my life settle down. But as it were, check out the link in my bio to all my other channels here, my TikTok and Instagram. I post quite regularly there, short little videos about our hidden past and more. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can always buy me a coffee or Venmo me. All my content will always be free and accessible to all, as through easily downloadable through my Telegram and other channels. But any support is greatly appreciated, nonetheless. But I thank you for watching tonight, and hope you have a pleasant rest of your week, and a happy holidays. And until next time, friends, question everything.